Howdy guys. I left a lot of time. Can't hear me? Alright, how about now? Good? A little better? I left a lot of time in the end for questions and comments, concerns, and all that, so try to reserve it towards the end. If you have something that you need to point out, feel free, but otherwise, try to save it. Is that better? Everybody can hear me?
There's a big fan blowing back here, but
Okay. Well, my name's Pat Fry. I'm an agricultural engineer for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. I'm not a regulator, I'm not an inspector, I'm not writing the regulations. There aren't even regulations for any sort of maple yet in terms of water quality discharges yet. I'm used to working with dairy farms and beef farms and goat farms, not maple. So there is a decent chance that, well, I know you guys all know a hell of a lot more than me in terms of maple. I just know water. So without further ado. So I work with the BMP program within the Agency of Ag. If you guys are dairy farmers, you might have heard about it, but if not, it's basically these grant programs that give out money to farms to help with water quality initiatives. So this could mean that like, you know, there's big manure facilities and things like that. We all help pay for that because we know we're asking a lot by saying you can't dump manure in the stream or what have you. So we help fund them. The engineers are there to help design these systems. And these grants can be up to $100,000 and we cost share 90%, so the state pays for 90% of them. And the reason I'm saying that is because maple operations are eligible for these items. And until now, I know nobody's really even thought about cleaning up water from maple because most of it's totally clean water anyways. But just for future reference, you guys are eligible to this. And a lot of the times we try to make these practices help out the farms as well, such as like compost facilities and things like that. So if you think of something that you know, could benefit maple operations too, then we're totally game for that, and we still cost share 90%. And so I know that you guys have been hearing a lot about water quality all around the state, from like, you know, Lake Carmi getting the blue-green algae to these private wells getting contaminated. There's basically just a huge push all over the state for water quality in general. Not just dairy, they're not just looking at dairy farms, they're looking at stormwater, you know, salt on roads, and now maple operations a little bit. And the whole reason that we are even looking at maple operations is because a private well was contaminated in 2016, and allegedly it was a maple operator. So it was a private well. Some readings came back really high with like iron and bacteria. It was a surface well, so it was like 3 to 6 feet deep, and a maple operator was less than a mile upstream of that. So it would appear that maple was the issue, and so that is pretty much why maple is even being looked at in general. And so
I got to ask the question now. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah, no.
What was it contaminated before? Yeah, how did? I guess I'm wondering, how did maple operations contaminate well?
Spoiled sap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at least that's what, you know, we talked to the maple operator, and he said, oh yeah, might have, you know, put some spoiled sap down the drain because everybody does that, and so that's probably what happened. I mean, it's hard to say because everything gets called in afterwards, and so.
Just quickly follow up, you're talking about spray, right?
Yeah.
So spoiled sap supposedly not
Yep. And then that spring was somebody's private water supply. And that's obviously a bad situation because that's somebody's drinking water. Um, so, and so basically what happened is the Agency of Ag, A&R, all those regulatory bodies. I'll list off what's important here, so don't bother trying to read it. The regulatory bodies basically got caught flat-footed because nobody had ever looked at maple as a concern, and so nobody knew what to do. Engineers didn't know what to do because I don't know how to design anything for maple for clean up water, and the regulators didn't know how to regulate maple. So they basically fell on this all-purpose permit, which is really strict and bad. It basically says that you can't dump anything that is within or out of 1 degree ambient temperature. The pHs have to be between like 6.5 and 8.5. They're impossible standards to hit, really. And so that's really bad. We don't want that because nobody can produce maple if this is the permit that they have to get. And so we're basically trying to figure out who or what we can, some realistic terms that maple producers can hit. And so again, I'm not the regulator, I'm not writing the laws, but instead my boss came to me and said, I need you to figure out how to help mitigate some of the concerns for maple operations. And so I basically said, okay, what are the regulations? And there are none yet, so I have to look at all of your guys' effluent streams and then just figure out easy solutions to help the regulators be happy with what's going on at maple operations. And so at this point, I'm really just going around looking at all the effluents and trying to figure out easy, cheap solutions to prevent any sort of thing like somebody's well water getting contaminated, or folks down in Montpelier or Washington, D.C. thinking that maple operations are causing any of the blue-green algae or private wells and things like that. And so, looking at all your waste streams that permeate, RO wash water, evaporator wash water, spent diatomaceous earth, your pump water, and the raw sap. So the raw sap also includes spoiled sap. And basically that broke down into 6 different categories of concerns. Biological oxygen demand is a really general characteristic of just contaminated water. That's like what you look at for like your septic system as a, that's what you measure to see if you can treat that. And other wastes, you look at the biological oxygen demand. So I'm looking at that because that's in the sap and in some of the acids that you guys used, and acids and bases just from the cleaning, the ROs if you have ROs, and the evaporators. Then phosphorus, that's really only present if you guys use phosphoric acid to clean the pans. And the big reason that I'm looking at that is because that's what the big push is for in the state, is lowering phosphorus content in the lakes. Again, like the blue-green algae, everybody seems to be pointing the finger at phosphorus from dairy farms. So it just is something to be cognizant of, is that if like Vermont Digger, or, I don't know, one of those like news publications found out that maple operations might be part of that too, then that could cause a whole storm, and nobody wants that. Then thermal and hydraulic loading, those are pretty small, but it's just something that again is part of that permit that they had to fall back on. Thermal loading just being heat. The people that care about like the three-toed frog or whatever those like weird animals are that cause all sorts of difficult issues, they might complain that you guys are heating up the stream and causing issues. Same thing with hydraulic loading. If that like endangered frog or whatever it is living in that stream behind your house, they might say, well, you're flooding him and you're getting I don't know, whatever it is that they complain about. And then just coliform. I'm sure you guys have all heard of coliform. That's in raw sap. It's not a huge deal, but it's existent. So those are all the things that I'm basically looking at and trying to lower from maple operations. And to start off, the easy ones, hydraulic and thermal loading. So basically, just need to lower the temperature before it reaches a stream wherever that endangered frog is living or whatever it is, and just make it so it's not a roaring stream to get in there. It's really easy to take care of that. Is just add like riprap or crushed stone to that drainage ditch before it reaches a stream or surface water. Just add riprap to that ditch, you know, where your sugar house's discharge is, and then it might meander for a few hundred feet, and then it hits like a little brook or something. Crush stone into it. Should take care of most of the temperature, and it'll just slow all the water down. That's it. It's easy, super cheap. Acids and bases that you guys use for the cleaners, try to neutralize them before you discharge them from your evaporator. So if you use phosphoric acid or whatever it is that you use, just follow those baking soda guidelines. Has everybody seen those? I think it was at the Proctor Center that made those. Just the ratios. Does everybody know what I'm talking about there? Yeah, try to follow those before you dump them. Dump that down the drain. So that should neutralize that. But I know that when you use the RO, that's not exactly what happens, because you flush the acid down, and then that's already like connected to the waste stream, and then the base comes later. So it might not exactly neutralize before it gets out. It's a plug of acid and then a plug of base. So what I'll be looking at to do is just add like a smaller tank outside of there, and so it basically would just give chance to have the acid get into that tank and then be swirled around in any sort of permeate discharge from those ROs, and then the base would get in there, and then that should hopefully neutralize it. And if some of the guidelines say that you need to add baking soda to help further neutralize, then go for it. But basically that way, that by the time it reaches any sort of stream, then it's neutral water, and it's not a plug of acid killing fish and then a plug of base killing fish, frog, or whatever it is, then also getting into people's wells. Raw sap, diatomaceous earth. Really just try to not stack that diatomaceous earth near stream. I know it's really silly, but it'll just make people happy. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, it's not hard. Just if you can stack it 400 feet into the woods rather than right next to a stream, it'll really just make people in Montpelier a lot happier. Simple. And then the raw sap too, just trying to make it so it doesn't go into a stream right away. That's it. If you can have it take the long path into a stream, then great. So it's totally, so she asked about distance. It's totally dependent on your sugar house. You know, some people have it on top of a field and they've got half a mile until it even hits anything that looks like a stream or a brook. Some people have a stream or a brook 10 feet outside their sugar house. The longer the better. So if you have the option, if like, you know, the stream is 50 feet that way, have it meander by just digging a ditch. That'd be better, because that just gives it more time to cool down and all that before it reaches surface water, and then like also just get diluted with melting snow. So really just like as best you can is it. Pretty simple. Oh yeah, don't dump spoiled sap or vinegar. That's likely what caused that issue and the whole reason that this is being brought up now, so just don't don't try to do that. If you have spoiled sap or vinegar, then just try to send it away from the stream. I really need to emphasize that because that is pretty likely what contaminated the well. So if you can send it as far away from the stream as possible, that would be huge. Or just don't make vinegar. And if you do, then use it.
So you're saying that should be within the same channel as a riprap RO?
Ideally not, because spoiled sap or vinegar is still spoiled sap or vinegar. Riprap's not going to change that, really. And so the best thing that can happen is it just gets land applied. You know, the grass and weeds and all of that stuff just soaks it up, and putting it into a channelized area is not going to get it soaked up because that area is probably going to be totally stream formed. And so just trying to send that anywhere that it can just get soaked up by the grass, the weeds, the trees, the, whatever. That would really just help out. Yeah.
What is raw sap and spoiled sap?
Well, spoiled sap usually is been contaminated with something. I can't remember some of the bacterias that are in the spoiled saps and things like that. And then when raw sap is really just sugared water, in a sense. So it.
Spoils are probably fermented, right?
Say that again?
Spoils are probably fermented.
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you even classify as spoiled sap, too. Yeah.
I hate to do this, but spoiled sap, say you had some upstream, you say upstream, that's like water-wise, not upstream. If there's a well 100 yards below you, there's a house 100 yards below you, and your spoiled sap's going in the ground here, it's not going to find a vein and run to there. By the time it finds water down in the ground,
It'll probably be treated.
Okay.
I mean, groundwater is like a tricky thing. Some groundwater flows uphill. Sometimes it flows, wherever it wants to. To get groundwater from here to the car behind me, it could take a year. It could take a day. So basically, it's really hard to say whether or not it would be treated, whether it travels 50 feet or not. If it's going like half a mile, I can pretty much guarantee it'll be treated by then. But if it's going 100 feet, it might
so
not be.
through soil, you can't guarantee much of it.
It's hard to say. Yeah, pretty much. If it's going a long distance, then it'll be treated. You can leave it at that. If you got a well within 50 feet of where you're dumping it, then maybe try to aim it somewhere else. Yeah.
If you have a brook that's relatively close to the sap tank in the woods, and you got a little bit of sap left over in there that is not going to go back to the foot at. And if that makes its way into the brook, the fresh sap, is that a problem?
In small quantities, no. But the sugars that are in there, the bacteria might like, and cause some issues. And there's coliform in raw sap. And so if you're putting in, like an acre's worth of sap into one small concentrated area, then that can cause issues. But if it's just like your leftover sap, a few gallons here and there, it's not an issue.
You know, just saying, when you get all these ice storms and you get all these little fruit that are broke off the top of the tree and it warms up, they all drip the sap into the brook.
Yep. Yeah, so that's like natural. That's the natural sap. It's a non-issue. It's just that when you guys are pulling sap from trees and really like pulling way more than is what nature is used to, is that people have a little bit more concerns is all. Yeah, really it's being looked into further, as mentioned, but just little bits of sap is obviously natural. It's just when you got a 10,000 gallon tank and you go, I don't want any of this stuff, that actually might cause some issues. Yeah. Yeah, no worries.
presentation you were giving as for example, for someone who's very concerned about this, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
The question would be, what are they doing? Right? So, if you're saying don't dump it, I don't see what the building is.
The land apply.
Land applying is different from
Yes.
that.
Dumping it, to what I mean by dumping is dumping down the drain in your sugar house.
Bring it into a channel that's going to bring it to
Yep, exactly. So that's what I'll talk to regulators, and I'll say that they're land applying their vinegar, and that's an accepted practice. That's what people do with cow manure. So you can do what you want on your
Do you have a
land.
sense of how that would affect cropland?
I don't. I'm actually going to be looking at that in the spring, but right now I have no idea. Yep. Yep.
Just get back to your original thing about the well that was infected or affected by this in 2016. How far was that dumped from the well? Like you said, it was 3 miles.
No, it was closer to a mile.
Mile.
Yep. Just under.
Very unlikely scenario that would ever happen in that.
Yep. It is. It was just unlucky. I guess it was probably bound to happen at some point, right? With everybody's operations getting larger, eventually something's going to happen. So let's just try not to make it happen again. I have no idea. Yep, I got no clue. Yeah. Well, it could have been unlucky that the person their well was drawing water right as that plug of spoiled sap was going over it, because if you dump 200 gallons, it's probably just going to stay in a plug of 200 gallons going down the stream, and then it just so happened that the well was picking up right then as that sap seeped into the groundwater that they were pulling from. So it could have just been terribly unlucky. It's really hard to say because nothing happened until after the fact, so it's hard to.
Shallow wells and springs are considered safe sources anyway.
Well, that's neither here nor there. So really, everything that I've mentioned prior to this is easy, simple. I'm not actually concerned about, even though I'm not a regulator. But what I actually am looking at is the biological oxygen demand and the phosphorus. So just to, I know numbers don't really mean a whole lot if you have no reference point, but in your evaporator wash water, biological oxygen demand got measured there. It was 20,000 milligrams per liter. Your septic tank is 150. So this is considered 20 times as polluted, or 200 times as polluted as your septic tank. So that's just something to look at. And then same thing with your phosphorus. It's 6,000 times what's allowed in the stream. So again, this is only your evaporator wash water, so we're not talking about a whole lot of water. But that water is something to actually be looked into. It's just something to be cognizant of. I'm still looking at ways that this can be dealt with, but in the meantime, do try to, be cognizant that this is pretty gnarly stuff that you are dealing with. So in the meantime, just try to neutralize it before you send it out, and then just dilute it with permeate if you can. So.
Are you diluting it out after when you're going through the rinse still? I mean, you don't use that much
Yep.
water to do the wash, and then you do a long rinse.
Yeah. So this is actually after the rinse. So this is the wash water. So the acid that's in there, and then this is it after diluted was this 20,000 milligrams per liter.
That was the evaporator wash.
Yeah, evaporator,
Right,
not.
using acid, phosphoric acid to the evaporator.
Yep, exactly. So it's the phosphoric acid that causes the phosphorus. Makes sense. And yeah, and so the big thing is just like that phosphorus. If somebody does find out that sugar makers are using phosphorus, and then some person from VPR or whoever who reports all this blue-green algae stuff, if they go, sugar makers are contributing to this too, then like that's going to be terrible for everybody, and it's not going to help at all. So just trying to be cognizant of that can help out a lot. Again, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it, but yeah.
So the fact of neutralizing the phosphoric acid completely eliminating the effects of the phosphorus?
No, so the phosphorus is still present, it just is no longer acidic. So that's kind of why I'm trying to figure out how to deal with it in the meantime, because it's no longer acid, which is good, but if any of you guys are like on the Lake Carmi watershed and somebody heard about it, then people are going to start complaining, and senators and legislators and whoever are going to say sugar makers are doing it just as bad as dairy farmers. And so right now I don't have a great solution for you. Best solution I have is just that tank that would hold the RO wash water to allow it before it gets out there. If it just gets diluted a whole bunch there, then like dilution is the solution to pollution. Right now, not really.
I just did the quick math, and even with the dilution that we've got, I'm still 40 times more than allowable.
Yeah.
After I've diluted my 1,500 gallons on like 3 proteins.
Yep. So,
But if it takes a long time to get to the stream, is it?
I don't know. I haven't studied it as much as I need to, again, because I can only study it once a year, so that's the issue. So I don't, like I'm saying, I don't have a solution for you guys right now. Hopefully I will in a year. Give another. Yeah.
Are you measuring phosphorus upstream and below stream?
I will be. Yep. Until this past year, I didn't even know anything that was going on in Sugar House. So I'll have a lot more information come next year. But right now, I'll be studying, before up right where you're discharging down below, then streams that are the stream a mile downstream, and then I'll just be trying to figure out solutions for this wash water. You guys can't read this at all, but it's basically just all of the numbers from that was part of this study, and it comes out to just being the contact wash water. So the evaporator wash water is the concern. Everything else is not too big of an issue. It's pretty low on everything within allowable limits except for the temperature. So it's really just the contact wash water being really, really high, as well as raw sap being really high in coliform. All these numbers are saying. So it basically, as a takeaway right now, if an environmentalist were to call you in like 6 months, or a regulator or something like that, and they say, what are you doing to take care of all of your discharge water, then if you could say like, oh, well, I'm rerouting it, like the ditch is way longer than it was supposed to. It's full of riprap now, which should help cool everything down and slow everything down, preventing erosion. I'm neutralizing it beforehand. I'm land applying that vinegar or the spoiled sap. That's going to sound really good and a lot better than what happened when the contaminated well happened, and then we called up the maple operator and said, well, what are you doing with your discharges? And he goes, he had no answer because nobody has any answer. Yeah.
As far as the discharges from the sugar house, one thing that I haven't talked about is the water system, steam away with piggyback, hot water. You utilize most of it to put that it still goes down the drain.
What is this?
Hot water.
For
It's a condensate, comes from the steam away. Most producers will keep certain out of it for water and stuff,
Mhm.
but a lot of it goes down the drain.
I think you already addressed that with having a long discharge.
Yeah, if it's just a thermal loading, then hopefully dilution and the riprap would take care of it as long as in a longer re-root ditch. I'm pretty unfamiliar with it, so I don't know if there's any. You guys put chemicals in it or anything like that, or it's just steam. Yeah. So just taking care of the thermal loading should take care of that. Yeah.
Since we have a couple of sources of hot water, could we use that to increase the amount of coliform load in a raw sap? We do need to discharge raw sap.
Yep. So that's something that I'm going to be looking into again, but I would imagine that would work pretty well, is just to kill off any sort of coliform. Depends on the temperature. I'm not sure what coliform can live up to. Maybe you do, but yeah. But yeah, so using hot water to kill it, or just diluting it to the point where it's pretty much at allowable levels, are all pretty good solutions. So it could be, should be mixing it with permeate, but I imagine you wouldn't have a whole lot of permeate if you're dumping raw sap anyway, because it's probably just bad sap. So yeah, that's what I'll be looking into. And really that's it. So from here I figured you guys would want to have questions and discussions about it, but so these are all BMP suggestions. So like I was saying, the state will help fund these things if you'd like. If you call me to help fund for riprap, I might not be as inclined because riprap is pretty much free. So I'm not going to fall for that, but everything else, yeah.
Has there been any discussion on the amount of RO water that's discharged?
Yeah, so that's the hydraulic loading is a fancy way of saying just the amount of water. So the riprap, so it's just like a lot of water for a small amount of area. And really it comes down to you're creating like this brook, because it's like, it can be like up to 6 gallons a second or something like that, which is like a small brook in an area that it shouldn't be, or isn't naturally, I guess, would be a better way to phrase it. And so adding the riprap should help prevent any sort of erosion there. And then by the time it reaches an actual stream is usually like 100 gallons a second, or the Winooski is like a few thousand. And so as soon as it reaches like an actual stream, then it's chump change to what's actually going on. So really just the riprap helps prevent erosion from any sort of hydraulic loading.
And caustic soap with the RO, as long as you neutralize that,
It should be good. I'm sure there's still a decent amount of like biological oxygen demand in there, but just diluting that in the meantime, adding riprap will help that a lot. So right now, like I said, I'm not a regulator. I'm trying to help push the regulators in the right direction by saying like permeate, like don't look at permeate, things like that. But I don't have final say in what happens with the rules and laws, so I don't want to tell you to put in like some, $20,000 fix and then have it be moot in a few years.
Are you aware of any of the wash solutions out there that might be lower in phosphorus because they're a blend of acids that we might use instead?
So that's something I'm going to be looking into again, just because I came late to the party last year. So I'll be looking at different acids that are options, but I'm hesitant to suggest one and have it not work. So I'm going to try to find somebody that will volunteer to try these lowers or just different acids that might work.
Well, if it's relatively the same
pH.
Well, yeah, if it works the same, I don't really care. As long as the end product is a clean membrane or a clean chamber.
Yep. I just don't want to suggest anything
Right,
and
right.
have it be incorrect, so I'm hesitant to say. Yeah.
So what this program, if somebody would, wanted to put in a settling pond or a lagoon, they might help fund that
Yep.
effort and, siting of it and permitting, costs and stuff like that.
Yep. So we would help offset all of those costs. Probably leave the permitting to you because I don't want to touch that. But yeah, we would help offset everything up to $100,000 is where our limit is. So, and we cost share 90%. So you have to find the 10%. You can even do that in kind. So if you got a backhoe or something like that, then we pay you for that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. It sounds like a reasonable answer for what you're talking about, for all the others you have.
Yep. So a settling pond is a great solution. It's just that I know not everybody has land for that. Is all. You know, if you're in a valley, then you might not have space for a settling pond or anything. And it's a big ask for this solution. But yeah, that would take care of pretty much all of the woes except for the evaporator wash water. Yep.
Is that kind of like almost a modified leach field system, thinking about with pressure off and whatever?
In a sense, I mean, leach fields are a little different. They're not open air, obviously. So I get like a lagoon, I guess, would be a modified leach field if you wanted to look at it that way. Yeah, so that's actually what I'm hoping to be looking at this spring is trying a leach field. I don't want to tell people to put one in and have it fail. But yeah, so that's actually going to be my biggest guess as to what might be the actual fix for that wash water is because small amount of water with pretty high.
Maybe a mound system of sorts.
Yeah, necessary. Mound systems are a little bit more expensive than leach fields, so ideally not. Yeah, but if you have clay.
Out in a moist area.
Yep. Yep.
I make a comment. One concern I have is if people decide to try things to help you out by experimenting, and it turns out that they solve that problem, but they're not food safe.
They're not what?
Food safe. So the idea that you might use another acid, but it contaminates syrup when you get the needed. So people should be really careful about things going through.
Yep. And so again, that's why I'm not suggesting any sort of acid now, just because I haven't looked into it. Things like the leach field, that's obviously not going to cause any.
We had a lot of syrup contaminated sulfuric acid a few years ago.
Okay, thanks for the comment. That's good. I think so. Yep.
When do you expect that you'll have an answer? And when will the new regs come down?
Regulations are hopefully after I have answers. I'm trying to push it that way. Whether they decide to listen to me is another thing. They're scared that somebody else's well is going to get contaminated, and then articles are going to start popping up that Agency of Agriculture and other things are not looking at these systems. So the issue is that we only have years, like we're on a yearly cycle. So hopefully I'll be putting in systems this summer at different operations, which would mean that I get to test them again next spring. So really it might be 2 years before we have an actual answer as to what could work. And hopefully the regulations would come after that. I can't promise that.
Are you looking at just larger cubic meters?
Yeah. So if the regulations came out, I would imagine that it would be in the same way that dairy farms, the way that the dairy farms did is, or just farms in general, is that they started out only looking at the large farms, the sweet tree people and all of them, and then work their way down. So that's what they've done with dairy farms and just farms. And so it would probably be similar with the maple operators. I don't know where the cutoff would be as to whether that's 50,000 taps or 100,000 taps. I don't know. But yeah.
When we're talking about the regulations, mechanism for that, would you envision that as a modified RAB
Yep.
for ag?
Yeah, so exactly. It would probably be written into the RAPs as just if you're a sugar maker, then sugar maker with, you know, X amount of taps, then do this. Or you can't be doing whatever it is that they determine. But yeah, so that's. Mhm. Yeah, so the BMP is just this grant money at this point. I know it's kind of confusing with all the acronyms, but yeah, so the best management practice, the BMP, is just the grant system that's in place to get funding for these systems. When the RAPs, the required agricultural practices, is what is required. No, I think it's all lumped into the RAPs now. Yep.
The phosphoric acid that we're using now, I believe is used in the dairy industry as well. Do you know what they're required to do with their phosphoric acid?
I don't. Capture and collect. Yep. Also, I've got my business cards, and I've even got a couple of BMP applications. So if you guys want to take them, you think you might want to try something or give me a call, that would be great. This spring, I'll be going out to different facilities and kind of trying to figure out what actually is an issue. Because right now I'm really only looking at one set of numbers as far as like what is in the evaporator wash water, what's in the RO wash water, etc. And so the more numbers, the more realistic it's going to be. And so that's where I kind of need your guys' help, because I just need some operations to go out and test. So if you guys are, if anybody's open to that, please take my card and call me or email me. And if you want to fill out applications because you got an idea that you want to try, then I'm all ears for that. Yep. Yeah, they really haven't. All they've done is say you're allowed to discharge or permeate. Nowhere else has done anything, which means that they should be falling back, like legally, they're supposed to be falling back on that permit that I showed you. Obviously, that's not what's happening, but really Vermont's, the biggest, so nobody else really is concerned with it. Yep.
In your last slide, large storage tank, is that you visualize a structure or
either or, interchangeable. I mean, they do the same thing. It's just some sites might not be able to have a settling pond or something like that, but having a 2,000 gallon tank or 10,000 gallon tank takes up a whole lot less space than a settling pond. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm curious about oil cooled or dry screw vacuum for water pad. I've seen some of the oil cooled.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell people to switch pumps because the hydraulic loading for the pumps isn't really what I'm concerned about. But if you're on the fence getting a new pump and you are thinking, should I get the oil cooled dry screw or water pass, then it's just something else to consider that people are wondering about what's going on. I wouldn't put any sort of money or change your operation style based upon that, though. If you want your water cooled pumps, then keep using it. All right.